Welcome to Tail Learn Code. Here there will be tales about software development, learning from each other, code to build solutions. And now your host, Chad Green.
So sure enough, this is tea time at Code PaLOUsa, right? And
Yes.
you can look at Alison's Twitter handle and see what I mean. British cola tea, right? I would say that means you like tea.
I do. I also like quality.
There you go. Exactly. And if you haven't been able to tell, Alice is not originally from the United States.
I am actually from England. We came over in 1998, got citizenship in 2009, and you're kind of stuck with us by now.
So why did you move to the United States?
Well, my husband was working for a small software company called Network Managers, and their tagline was the network management people. And he came home from lunch one day. I was coming home from university, and he said, "That's it. I've had it. I can't take it anymore. I'm going to apply to that ad that says live and work in America." And it was an ad that was about that big, maybe. And it just kind of went on from there. And it seemed like a good idea at the time, because if you can't do something stupid like leave the country when you're in your 20s, when are you going to do it? we figured we'd give it 2 years. And if we hated it, then we'd go back to London. And that was over 20 years ago now. So it seems to be working.
Awesome. Well, that's great to hear you love it. And have you always been in St. Louis, or have you moved around?
Yeah, we landed straight in St. Louis. It's a nice combination of big enough that you get Bon Jovi and Sting and decent bands turn up, and small enough that you can go to my favorite coffee place and they know who I am because I've been going there for 7 years.
Awesome.
It's a nice little city.
I like you're big enough. You're big enough because you get the bands to come in. I have to admit, well, this is now 10 years ago when Louisville was looking to build a new arena. That was one of the reasons was, well, this way we can get the big bands to come into town because we'll have an arena that's actually big enough to fit them. So.
Did it work?
Yes. So we do get all the good bands to come in here. I mean, we would have them come before, but the problem was like, down the street, 60 miles down south, you had Lexington that had a bigger arena. So it made more sense before for the big acts to go there. But now we have a bigger arena, and plus it's new, and so it's actually a really nice arena. I really like our arena. Although it's one of those that's designed so there are no bad sight lines, which means it is extremely steep when you get near the top. and I've gone to basketball games there, and I swear I feel like I'm gonna fall over and just fall onto the floor. Exactly. It is really, really steep.
That would be fun.
So how did you get started in technology?
Well, I married a nerd, and I'm a physicist by education, nerd by trade. I married a Java guy, and he kept talking about this fantastic recursive class loader that he was building, and it's like, okay, what are classes? What is recursion? Why would you load classes? Why would you load them recursively? Okay, now I understand what you're doing. That is actually kind of cool. So I taught myself Java. I taught myself Visual Basic for my internship year, and I liked the precision of it. And I sort of fell into doing QA via a couple of temp jobs. I was doing some documentation for a company that made the software that figures out who gets disability. And it was 25 years of layers of accreted COBOL software. And you just had to know that if you were testing this module, there were these invisible tentacles that reached out and did something to this module over here, even though there was nothing in between them. If they changed this particular thing, this thing would stop working. And I love the detective work of finding out all of those invisible links and then figuring out, like, what actually went wrong? It's like, I can see that it's wrong, but what's wrong and why is it wrong and where did it come from? Well, there's the sort of the forensic investigator after the plane has gone down. It's like, well, this thing was wrong here, and someone pressed this button, and this piece of data over there isn't quite right, and over there was a SQL injection attack. That's why everything blew up terribly.
And sure enough, I mean, you're not the typical tester in that you write code, right? So you're writing code to find the problems.
Yep. I write Java, C#, JavaScript, a little bit of Elixir, and I'm looking at learning Python because I want to play with some data science stuff. A QA that can code at a decent level is rare as hen's teeth and 10 times more valuable because the drive-by trolling opportunities are just so much better if you know how to code. Okay, with your Java people, you say, oh, yeah, you're missing a semicolon. And with your JavaScript people, you say, looks like this is undefined over there. Good luck with that. And then you can just walk off. It's great.
No, I gotta admit that is people are laughing at your rare as hen's tooth comment.
Oh, is that a Britishism?
Yes, that would be a Britishism.
Oh.
Or maybe maybe in St. Louis. I'm not sure, but.
Well, I am from rural England, the county of Suffolk. We would have the Suffolk show every year, and the John Deere equivalent would come out and show everyone their brand new tractor. It's a big event. It's like, oh, it's got big tires this year.
Awesome. So you work as Director of Quality Advocacy, right?
Yep.
So I find that to be an interesting title. I mean, what does that mean?
Well, we wanted to. We feel like QAs in worldwide technology do a lot more than just your average quality control person. Quality control is the saucepan comes off the end of the production line, and you want to see if it explodes when you put it in the oven. So you put it in the oven, and then it explodes, and that one failed. It's too late to do anything about it. You've wasted a lot of time there. Quality assurance, you're involved a little bit earlier, but still it's the last stage in the process, and everything flows downhill and it lands on the QA person. So we wanted quality advocacy is more about moving to the left. So our people are involved with our salespeople when they're talking to the clients before a contract's even been signed to say, I see what you're wanting here, and this thing is theoretically possible. This thing is never going to work, and we suggest you use these tools and this approach. We start the same day that our developers start work. You get the developers, the product owners, the QA, the user experience people. Everyone starts on the same day. The developers are thinking through their architecture and what they're going to build. The QAs are thinking, okay, he's going to build that, so I'm going to need test data for this, and I need a framework for that, and I really need to pay attention to my accessibility, and I'm going to need a consult from my security person on this, and we need to take care of HIPAA. You know, the product owner is thinking, what is going to provide the user the most value? And the quality advocate is thinking, how can I get the best possible product out the door? And it's a little bit of forensic investigation. It's a little bit of data science, some bug finding, trawling through code, and just a smidgen of bribery with baked goods.
Yeah,
you get a lot more with a kind word and a cupcake than you do with a grumpy word.
I'm gonna say, if you look at your Twitter feed, you see a lot of baked goods on there. You must do a lot of bribery.
We have an office down in Springfield, Missouri, and every time I go down there, I bake a pan of, they call them British flapjacks. It's not a pancake. It's like a sweet, salty, chewy granola bar. And the first time I went down there and I took flapjacks, they lasted, I don't know, like 3 or 4 days, and people liked them. And then the next time it was like 2 days, and then 1 day and half a day. And the last time I went down there were people literally waiting outside the door for me, and it was like, "Oh, hi, Alice. I'll just put these in the kitchen. It's lovely to see they're in the kitchen. I'll take mine, and then I'll go and tell everyone else."
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear about the developer advocacy piece, or the quality advocacy, I should say. You know, a lot of the bigger companies, it really is like just throwing code over the wall, right?
Yeah.
You know, you see that so often, right? Where it's the testers aren't even involved until the code is written. I mean, I've seen plenty of places where they don't even know the stories are coming until it's time to actually start testing.
Yeah, I feel like you wasted a ton of time doing that. The QAs at my company, we pair with the developers when they're doing development tasks. So they can say, "Oh, and what about this? And I'm going to test it with this, this, and this. And have you considered Asian characters on this?" So that the developers kind of have have more of the passing results before they even start work. So there's a bunch of stuff we can say, like, remember that this is a medical thing, and you have to comply with HIPAA, and you have to encrypt the daylights out of everything. If it's at rest, if it's in storage, if it's in transit, just encrypt everything, because I'm going to be testing that. And we also get developers pairing with QAs on testing tasks, because sometimes you just need to very specifically cripple part of Internet Information Service so that you can get a very specific error condition and make sure that it's going to handle it. And we love working with the user experience people, because they just know, they have this amazing eye for, no, it's 2 pixels off. Like, can't you see it? It's 2 pixels off. This has to change. It's like, okay, I trust you. We'll put in a bug for that. It's 2 pixels off.
I gotta admit, a long time ago, I had a boss who could see pixel differences, and of course, this was back when you had the difference between IE and Firefox and and all. Well, actually, I might have even been before Firefox. I think it was still Netscape at that point, and it was so frustrating because he'd be like, "Oh, that's 2 pixels off." I'm like, "Oh my god, how do you even see that?" Right? And I remember, we would actually, before we would show him things, I'd actually put it in Paint and blow it up so I could get to pixel, and I would compare between what was IE doing, what was and you'll love this because he was actually from the Netherlands. He had immigrated from the Netherlands, and so he was really big on Opera. And he's like, "Well, everything has to work in Opera," and I'm sitting there like, none of our customers use Opera, right? They're all U.S. based companies. They don't even know what Opera is.
It's a great browser, though. It was the most standards compliant browser I could use for testing. It was awesome.
Well, it was his European self that was like, "Oh, we have to be compliant with Opera." I'm like, "All right, you're the boss." But I was like, it was like our biggest customer was Kmart. I'm like, I don't think I see Kmart using Opera, right? This is obviously before they fell completely apart.
Yeah. I bet you there was one person that was probably in compliance or accounting or something that just loved Opera.
I don't think of that company. It's as I say, it was this one guy who insisted on it, and because he was the boss, we had to do what he wanted to do.
Yeah. Oh, now we're looking at, we have Windows versus Mac, phone versus tablet, iOS devices, iPhones, 6 different versions of Android, every different phone that you can think of, and then all of the browsers. Do you remember the HTC HTC One phone?
Yeah.
The M8 and the M9 from HTC, you can have 2 identical phones side by side. If you can have the same app on 2 different phones. If one of them is the HTC One, that will be the one with the bug. Like, everyone in the QA team knows it. We keep a couple of them specifically because they are the most persnickety little devices.
I'll have to ask our Android testers, what they're seeing with that. Of course, now your team is smaller than my whole company, right? Or I mean, it's bigger than my whole company. So it's
oh wow.
we're very lean, but but I know that I know our team goes through a lot of testing. Well, it's funny. We actually just switched from a native script apps to native apps because we were having so much problems with the native script.
Yeah, you can do so much more with a 100% native code base. I think it was LinkedIn that went from they were using React Native and to avoid having a Kotlin code base and a Swift code base, and they said, "Oh, screw it, this is just too complicated," and they went to completely native apps.
Well, that's what and again, I mean, I wasn't with the company when they made the decision to the native script, but I'm pretty sure that the reason was as well that way we have one code base. We're a smaller team, we can manage it. But they were having such a hard time, and the app was getting low ratings. So hence the, they made a decision about a year and a half ago, a little bit over a year and a half ago, to switch to native. And we've been we released Android, like March, and we released iOS like around June. Still trying to get to feature parity. We don't have a feature parity with our web client.
So who's ahead, Android or iOS?
Android's ahead.
Okay.
Which you would think would be the other way around because iOS has fewer variances. But it's actually because the iOS developer was also maintaining the native script app all along, so he was busy.
Cool. My husband is our Android principal engineer, so we are an entirely Android house.
Oh, okay.
But with Macs because they're the best development platform for Android.
Yeah, I would say our Android developer he does everything on Macs. And that's why when he runs into those weird problems, I'm like, well, just use a PC and you wouldn't have that problem. Yeah. Well, he tells me
nope.
He tells me the flip side because we got plenty of problems on the PC side. But if you can't have fun with the technology you love using, right, then you're not going to have fun with technology, right?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I look for when I'm hiring QA people is, do you have fun doing it?
Mm-hmm.
Is when I've been to a few conferences and I speak to some developers, sometimes they think that QAs are these miserable, sad little people that are terribly pessimistic and they live for finding bugs and they're just sad, shriveled up little. But the team that I work with, we do it because it's a hoot. You find a really cool bug, it goes in Slack with a screenshot of, hey, I just found this thing, I did this and this and this, and everyone's like, that's really, wait, I'm going to check that on my project. Hold on.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, that's a good point, right? I mean, it's I was actually on a hiring manager panel last week, and and it was meant for folks who are new to technology. And I talked about it. I said, your skill level is like a distant third thing I'm looking for. And I said my number one thing I'm looking for is, number one was ability to learn. Number two was passion, right? And then I said, like, what you currently know is a really distant third because number one, what you currently know is going to be outdated in 4 months anyway. So, but can't see why I need you to be able to learn, right? Because it's always changing.
Yeah, I look for curiosity and people that are good on teams. And I read a book years and years ago by Bob Sutton called The No Asshole Rule, and that's kind of been my golden rule with building a team. It's like, are you an asshole?
Mm-hmm.
Would I want to work with you? Are you going to be fun to work with, or are you just going to be not fun?
Right.
Because sometimes you run across the people that they're absolutely brilliant at what they do. They are smart and sharp, and they can get the job done really fast. But they're just corrosive when they're around people.
Yeah, I've had to keep those people, where I didn't want to. I wanted to move them somewhere else, and it was always hard because you had have these larger teams where, and then you got the one or two people who, who basically become the cancer of the team. And that's all. It is one of the hard. I think it's one of the hardest things to deal with management is once you have one of those, and especially if you just can't get rid of them, right?
Yeah.
How do you handle that so that others don't become a cancer because you're getting so upset with that person?
It's tough. And I've been in this role for nearly 7 years, and you see turnover of people, and sometimes the people are like, it just cuts your heart out that this particular person has left because they were fantastic and you love them, and then every once in a while someone leaves and you're just so relieved.
I've had those days.
Yep.
Yeah, I've definitely had those discussions of someone wants to leave and I'm begging them to stay. What can I give you? Others who want to leave, I'm like, have a good life. Yes, I've definitely had those days. I mean, I've been lucky. Most everyone who's worked for me has been really good. But you always have those couple that like, oh my goodness. Well, I'm curious. I mean, we talk about what you really enjoy, but what are some of the challenges you've seen doing all your work?
For people who are testers on software teams, sometimes it's usually from people that are outside the company that haven't worked with my team before, assume that the QA is just the test monkey at the end of the waterfall. Mm-hmm. And we have to sort of quietly change their mind about that. And it usually involves tactical application of donuts and pairing.
Food makes a big difference, right? It's amazing what food can do.
Food is the basis of civilization. Mm-hmm. If you can share food with someone, you can get on with them. But a lot of the time, it's just, hey, let me see what you do, and I'll ask you questions, and then you come and see what I do, and you can ask me questions, and we'll get to understand each other a bit better. And because we all want the same thing. No one comes into work thinking, I am going to write a bug-ridden product and send some noxious pile of dross out into the market. Everyone wants to do good work. They really do. And it isn't that QA and developers are fighting each other. We generally like developers. Mm-hmm. Like, developers are usually smart people that build fun things for us to play with. And we're the asshole that walks up to us and says, that thing that you built, this is so cool. I love it. I'm going to pour gasoline all over it and set it on fire to see what happens. Do you want to come and watch with me? It's going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta admit, as a developer, I've had my times where, as a general rule, I love testers and I love testing, and to me, that's part of my job is ensure that we're getting the testing done. But I definitely have my times where I'm like, oh my goodness, will they just please stop?
we can't stop.
Yeah.
We literally can't stop, and we can't turn it off. Like, I can go anywhere, and it's like, oh, typo. Yeah, this bug is right. I can walk around Best Buy. I'm like, oh, look, they left this one on too long and it's got burn-in problems. And that one over there, that's, someone turned on the developer tools and didn't turn them off again, so I can do this and this. And that one there, it's like, oh, no one's messed with this one yet. I'm going to turn on the developer tools and kick it into one of the colorblind modes.
So, well, cool. Let's talk about your talks, because I love the talks you're doing at Code PaLOUsa. So cool. I mean, the first one, leadership for introverts, which I gotta admit, awesome. Yeah, I gotta admit, the moment the committee saw that title, everyone's like, oh, we gotta have that session. That was even before they read the description. Everyone loved that title because obviously that's what we have in software development. It's a bunch of introverts, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously there's the key takeaway, but I mean, what's the key takeaway out of that talk?
I think for that talk, the key takeaway is you don't have to be the person that is standing up in front of a huge crowd, and delivering this life-changing message to be a leader. You can do a lot of leadership, just one-on-one stuff. And wherever you are, we need you to lead, because if the introverts aren't leading, then it'll just be the extroverts. And the extroverts will make decisions that mostly benefit them. So we need the introverts in the mix so that we can say, hey, have you thought about this? Or maybe we could do things a little bit differently. My company used to do these big Christmas parties, and they were fantastic for the extroverts. And one of my people said, this is exhausting. I don't want to go to this thing. Like, can we please have some kind of a quiet room? I said, fine, let's propose it. I'll back you. We'll talk to the right people. And the last 3 or 4, we had the big party with the tables and the people and the talking and everything. And we also had a quiet room with board games. And it was awesome. You could go there, you could hold a conversation, you could play a game, you could just unwind for a bit and then move on. But there's a lot of leadership that takes place that isn't the I am a named role in a named leadership thing and I am the only leader around. It's it happens every day. It happens when you're pairing. It happens at home. It happens when you're outside. And there's a lot of stuff that you can do. And one of the things I walked through in that talk is how I dealt with doing compensation reviews, which is basically 30 plus one-on-one conversations with people about what their compensation is going to be for the next year. So it's a tough conversation. Mm-hmm. You got to do all the people within 2 weeks flat. You have no time, no downtime. Everyone's got questions. Everyone wants to talk. And it can be really stressful. But it's doable. You just got to tweak around with your process a bit. So an introvert doesn't lead the way that an extrovert does. And we're not going to see people playing extrovert to make it work. But I think there's a lot of people out there that are like me, that are basically the quiet person that I don't do people. I really don't. I don't people well. But I do the one-on-one thing pretty decently. Mm-hmm. And that's really how I ended up in this role. Was I came into the company as a senior QA, and I looked around and no one was speaking for the QA team. I was the 8th QA in the door, and we were just isolated little islands all over the place, and no one was looking out for us. So I started doing QA stand-up so that we could talk to each other and figure out who was doing what and who needed help. And then we got some, everyone could expense a month it was code school at the time, so that we could get some coding ability, and then we could do a better job and we could integrate better with our team. And I just kept doing stuff like that. And eventually my boss turned around and said, yeah, I suppose we should make you a director. Really? I don't want to be a director. You don't want to give people to me. I don't people.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the compensation piece. I gotta admit, so my career, for a long time, I was a director over at HP, and I had a team of 63 people.
Big team.
We didn't have 2 weeks to do those compensation talks. We had a week. Actually, I don't even think we had a week. I think it was a couple days because the whole thing of it was we would finally get decisions made. And then you had to have everyone know what was before the next pay period. So it's literally only a couple days. And let it be known, the always annoying part was the week decisions were made was Thanksgiving week. And so you were spending Thanksgiving for several years. I spent Thanksgiving on the phone, of justifying why I wanted to give this person, a 2% raise, this person a 3%, because everybody would be more than 3%. And making deals, right? Because it was well, so-and-so needs a little bit more money in their budget. What about, could you relent a little bit here? It's okay, when do I get more budget on for my folks? But
yeah.
Yeah. That's why I remember I would, when I did my compensation talks, I always had the number written down on a piece of paper, a little post-it note. I'm like, here you go. That's what it is. You have any questions? and I'm like, can we go on to the next topic? Because I really don't want to talk about this.
Yep.
Because usually my problem is that our company would never, again, I could never give them a raise like I wanted to be able to give them. But that was because of the company going through financial issues every single year. I went through 3 years where there were no raises. That was fun.
Oh.
Yeah, that was fun. Nothing like going in year 3. It's like, well, I don't have a raise for you this year, but look how awesome everything you did, right? They were at least giving us bonuses, right? So we could give them bonuses, but bonus is not the same thing as a raise.
No, it's not.
So, and that's usually what I would tell my senior management. I was, oh, well, look, we're giving you, all this money for bonus money. I'm like, yeah, but that's a one-time thing. That, you're getting taxed at a really high rate, so it's not really, you're not really getting all that money anyways. And
yeah, they're really tough, stressful conversations to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and well, it's even worse when someone asks out of cycle, hey, I really need more money, and it's like, oh my goodness, you realize what that means in this company to get you more money out of cycle?
You have any idea how much paperwork this is going to cause?
Well, on top of it, I literally would have to go, 5 VP levels up, right? It was insane.
That's horrible.
Yeah. But I think leadership's for introverts as a general concept is an interesting thought, right? Because it's not natural for us. Yeah. But I think that at the other side of it, I think introverts make really good leaders. And sure enough, I think of one of the best people I've ever had leading me. He is the biggest introvert you'll ever meet. Mm-hmm. And actually, I've seen a just survey on him. I know exactly because it's scientifically proven that he's a humongous introvert. But he's one of the best leaders I've ever had. Right? Because they take the time to think about it, right? Instead of just making rash decisions. Again, I'm not saying introverts just make rash decisions, but they are quicker to jump instead of an introvert who usually will think more about it before they make a decision.
Yep.
So, and then your other session, and I gotta say, you mentioned Star Wars, and so that's kind of like an automatic. Here's a little tip for people submitting talks to Code PaLOusa. It's really hard for me to say no to anything that mentions Star Wars. So, power leveling the Padawans.
Yep. So, what I was going at with this one was I spent 5 years mentoring someone one-on-one every single week. He came into the company and as a kind of a mid-level QA, and at the time I set up one-on-ones with all of the newbies, and we'd go for about 10 weeks, and then I said, is this useful to you? Do you want to continue it, or do you want to stop doing it? And a lot of people said, yeah, I'm good. I think I know my way around the company. And this one guy, it's like, no, I want to keep doing this. It's like, all right. So we worked together one-on-one 5 years, and he's actually now my co-director of the quality advocacy practice. And somewhere along the line, it went from me mentoring him to both of us working on problems together to sometimes it was him mentoring me. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the personality tests, we are as different as you can get. But it worked. And he has come up with some really interesting solutions to problems that I've had. And the way that we worked together was like, I told him at the start, you are my science experiment. You have, at this point, I think it was like 3 years experience as a QA. And I was going on 10 years experience at that point. And I said, you have 3 years experience. I'm going to give you everything I have learned from my 10 years and try and jump you up forward faster than you would get there alone. And we're going to see how far you can go. And that was the science experiment, and we checked in on it periodically, and he just took off like a rocket. It was great to see.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's great to see people, that you're working with, excel. And the other part of it, I always tell people I learn a lot more from junior developers than I do from senior developers a lot of times, because it make you think. Because they ask you, well, why, right? Senior developers just like, oh, okay, but junior developers will be like, why?
Yeah. They don't always understand the why, and they don't know to stop asking the question after it gets awkward. But if you want to work with smart people, then you can do one of two things. You can build it or you can buy it. Mm-hmm. And the hiring process is generally about buying what you need. But the mentoring process is you want to work with a smart person next year, you build them now. And some of the things I've done with people is like practicing active listening techniques. Mm-hmm. Teaching, it's like, all right, we're going to have a conversation and you're going to try the active listening. And then at some point we hit pause. Like, okay, so you said this thing when I said this, and that meant that you'd paid attention to this facial expression because what I wanted you to pick up on was this thing. And you got kind of it, but you didn't get all of it. And then we had this weird meta conversation going. We'd be talking and then we'd drop out. It's like, okay, so how did this bit go? And you did this and I did that. And then we go back in. And he said it was exhausting, but he tried it on his wife and she really, really liked it. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot about how do you want to teach people and you want to give them all of the tools, but you can't turn them into a clone army. Because you can't give them exactly what you've got, and you need to tailor things to the people so that they learn things in a way it makes sense for them, and they can make their own connections to it.
Right, exactly. That's cool. So, moving on. So, I'm curious, how has the pandemic treated you?
I miss people.
Yeah,
I really miss people. My company went all remote in mid-March, and I used to work in an office in downtown St. Louis. I could see the baseball stadium, and when they hit a home run, I could hear the cannons go off and all of the crowd cheering, and it was great, except for the traffic. But my entire team, the application services division, we're all remote now, and it's been a learning experience. Mm-hmm. Like no meeting is complete without unexpected cat butt turning up. My company actually sent out a bunch of little cards that you can hold up in meetings with things like there's the dead horse card of, please, for the love of Muppet, stop talking about this. And there's the squirrel card, and there's the rabbit card, and the +1. So some of the meetings where we used to have people in person and people on video calls, now that everyone's remote, it's actually a much better experience. Sure. Because you don't have that weird 2-layer thing going on. Everyone's got exactly the same experience, and I'd love to keep that if we ever go back into the office again. Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm curious, have you all tried to do any social type activities online as a company?
We've been using a tool called Sakoko, where you set up a virtual building, and there's a social gathering floor where we've had a bunch of happy hours. We usually do, they call it First Friday Application Services Happy Hour, which is FASH. Mm-hmm. We have FASH once a month, and everyone goes to the right floor on Sakoko, and you can gather with people and do video chat. It's been tough though.
Yeah, we try to do a couple things, and it's funny. We're a remote company anyways. We don't even have an office. Which makes a lot of sense for our company. It's funny. So being a remote company, but yet like the tech team is almost all in the Louisville area. Like there's one guy who's 2 hours south. But other than that, everyone's right here in the Louisville area.
You could get together if you wanted to.
Well, not with the pandemic going on.
Yeah.
So, but even being a remote company, I mean, we're feeling the effects of, because we used to, not every week, but at least every other week, we would have a team lunch, and it was all optional, right? But, people would come to lunch, and it's funny because I thought I was missing it the most, but, because I was the one who I was always there, right? And plus it was my way of talking to the team, more social, again, talking about the food opens things up, right?
Yeah.
And then, like over the last couple of weeks, I've been hearing from folks like, "Oh, I can't wait till we can go back to having a team lunch again." So and as a company, we've tried doing, we've tried doing like company lunches, and that's worked to an extent. It's just not the same.
No, not quite the same.
So that's actually. We were actually just had a tech leadership meeting earlier this week, and we were talking about we've got to do something. We just got to figure out what that is, while still being socially distanced. Everything's rising back up, and we don't want to be part of that.
Yep, we've got to figure out how to make masks fashionable.
Well, the problem is even with masks being fashionable, I gotta admit, I'm still of the I only go out when I really have to. I wear a mask the whole time.
Yep.
Luckily now the state has mandated masks. Because just a couple weeks ago, I remember I was out. I was almost terrified because no one was wearing a mask. I was like, oh my goodness, can we? It's not that hard to put a mask on.
Yeah. All of you plague rats need to go home.
So cool. So I got one last question for you, and it's more than because a lot of folks who watch my stream are actually newer developers, right? I get a lot of those folks. And more importantly, I get a lot of folks who are not just newer developers, newer into technology, and actually, the point they're still trying to figure out what they want to do. And I actually try to steer quite a few of them over to testing, or at least look at testing, right? Because they're like, I'm not sure I want to be a developer. I don't want to do this. I'm like, well, have you looked at testing, right? But so my question to you is, what is your advice to folks who are not sure what they want to do, and maybe looking at testing? What would you say to look at for that?
I would say stay away from game testing because that's not a great environment to start in.
Well, game development period right now is not a...
Yeah. Hang out with some developers. See if you like them, because if you're going to be spending a lot of time with them. I have an Amazon list of testing books. Mm-hmm. And if you can find anywhere that does an apprenticeship program, that would be fantastic. We've trained 9 QA apprentices, and they are some of the best people that we've got on the team. It is just been awesome to train them. They're like a group project. It's like, ooh, can I play with the apprentice now? It is all about the detail. Everything. You train yourself to notice things. Like we'll be walking down the street, and my husband's a developer. He produces beautiful applications, and I'll say, "Oh, look, that thing there, it's crooked." It's like, is it? I can't even see that. How do you see that? Mm-hmm. Oh, there's a lot of, if you like detail stuff, and if you like kind of tearing something apart to find out if it works. Yeah, the best thing about QA is that you can go in, you can make a terrible mess and say, I found a bug, and then someone else cleans up after you. It's great.
That's a good way of thinking about it.
You can use tools that just machine gun the software to death. Mm-hmm. 2 of the load testing tools that we love are called Gatling and Artillery, and that's exactly what they do. They just spray HTTP requests at something until it falls over. It's great. But if you like pulling on a string and finding the end of it, that's a really good place to start with QA. And there are places where you can sign up online and do software testing to see if you like it. I've got a friend that does a lot of board game testing. Absolutely loved going to Gen Con every year. And he would be testing alpha versions of board games and coming up with, it's like, well, if you have these cards and this set of rules, then you've got this massive exploit here. You need to close that loophole. It's a lot about the finding out how things work and chasing it down. When I'm testing on a team, I'm in Visual Studio, I'm in VS Code, I'm in Android Studio, I'm in Xcode. I'm working with Postman and Insomnia. We're playing with Cypress and Eggplant. There's a lot of interesting tools to play with. And Selenium is the grandfather of all of the new testing tools, but people are still using Selenium. It's still out there as probably the best documented testing tool, which sadly doesn't tell you a huge amount. I think a lot of people learn QA from some other grizzled veteran that got into the business. And that's pretty much how I learned. It's like, oh, Roger is retiring. Why don't you take Roger's job doing testing? It's like, well, Roger spends 3 hours a day asleep in the lab. I'm pretty sure I can do a better job than that. And it started out of just diving in and exploring. I think the biggest value that QAs bring on a team is the exploratory testing that just starts with the phrase, what happens if? Like, what if I just do this? What if I start here and then go that way instead of this way? So getting into testing, talk to QAs, sign up with the Ministry of Testing, which is a fantastic community, and they're very active on Twitter, and they have a lot of really cool courses you can take. And if you want fun people to talk to, they're usually Ministry of Testing people. And QA is fun. If you've heard what I've described and it sounds like death on a biscuit for you, then don't do it.
Exactly. No, I appreciate that, because like I said, because I talk to a lot of people. I don't know if you know, but here in Louisville we have what's called Code Louisville, and the whole idea is people who are trying to get into programming, right? They're a lot of them are like wait staff or doing dead end jobs, and so they're trying to find something different. And they realize that not all of them are going to be coders, right? They go through the courses and like, yeah, this is great, but and then and that's one of the things I talked to them about. Well, did you look at testing, right? I mean, there's it's a different set of skills. They're still using technology. And like like we were talking about with you. I mean, you're writing code to break code. I mean, I love it. You actually have in your bio, goal is to write code that breaks code.
My goal is I want automated tests to do the boring stuff.
Right.
Computers are good at repetitive, always the same, never going to change. And humans absolutely suck at repetitive and boring. So you write the code to get the computer to do the repetitive and boring, and then you can do the interesting stuff with the injection attacks and poking around at security holes. There is always something to learn with QA. Absolutely always. One of my best people, she graduated from Wash U with an electrical engineering degree. First job out of college was the NSA, and she was always interested in security. So she was a fantastic QA, and then the security just snagged her, and now she's working as a security analyst in our AppSec practice. Mm-hmm. And one of her main goals is to raise the level of security knowledge of the QA team so that we have all of these cool security tests that we can run and find a crap ton of bugs with them. Like if your system has a hole in it that you could drive a truck through, she will find it. If it has a hole in it that a mouse could fit through, she will find it.
Well, and also that's the more important ones, because the ones the truck fits through, more people should be able to find it. It's the small ones that those are the ones you really got to worry about. You know?
Yeah.
Because those are the ones that get exploited more than anything else.
Yeah, just teeny tiny little thing that's slightly out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you got a buffer overrun somewhere. Maybe you got a race condition.
Yep.
I do have someone on my team that she's not allowed to have those 5-hour energy things because the last time she had one, she manually caused a race condition on an Android app.
I feel like I need to meet that person. It just sounds like a fun person.
She's a hoot.
Yeah. Awesome. Any parting thoughts you have?
QA is fun. We need interesting people to do QA. If you like developers but you don't want to be a developer, look at QA because honestly, we have way more fun than they do. I tell everyone that comes in the company, it's like, I'm really sorry, but you didn't join the best team on the company because that's my team.
Right.
My team have more fun. We do more things. We get to learn every single day. We get to break stuff, and it's a good thing, and we get paid for it.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you joining me this afternoon, and more importantly, speaking of Code PaLOusa again. Wish you could be able to be here, but unfortunately, that's not going to happen this year.
Yeah, maybe next year.
Yeah, like I said, hopefully next year we'll be able to go back to. We'll definitely be doing hybrid from now on. I think that's definitely part of the new reality of the world. But I definitely hope we can have at least our speakers back next year.
Cool. That would be fun.
I love hanging out with all the speakers.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the talk today, Chad. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I'll talk to you later.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.